home to watch it. Welcome. Thank you all for coming. My name's Owen Poole. I'm the editorial page editor at the Day newspaper in New London. Just to let you know a little bit about, I've been doing that for about 2 years. I write the occasional editorial, manage opinion, go through letters, submissions, all that stuff. Josh Kelly reached out to me probably about a month ago and asked if I would be interested in helping organize a candidate forum. I said yes. I didn't really want to, or wasn't able to. I didn't think to really kind of organize it completely. So Josh handled a lot of like the legwork, inviting people and picking the day, and I came up with the questions. Nobody has seen the questions yet prior to tonight. So there was no like beforehand knowledge. None of these questions, by the way, are real tough. I mean, this is more like a casual, informal kind of get to know people kind of forum. I think we were both kind of careful, or tried to be anyway, not using the word debate, because I think that's not what I'm anyway looking to do here. This is more like a, get to know everybody, tell us more about yourself and what your plans for your hopes for the town, that sort of thing. So like I said, the questions are, I think anyway, fairly simple, straightforward. I think we have 5 Board of Ed and 2 Board of Finance. Is that right, candidate?
3 Board of Finance.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Board of Ed.
I'm sorry. So who am I? Oh, is Jerry Board of Finance?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. My fault.
It's okay.
Let's go on.
Okay, so I have done a lot of these before. I did a little bit congressional debate last year and a state rep debate in East Lyme. So I do have a little bit, but not a whole lot. I've only been doing this particular job for a couple of years. So I think the best way to do it is, start with the Board of Ed, ask a question, each answer, and then we'll go to the Board of Finance and do the same thing. And probably better to, if Deb starts first for the Board of Ed question, maybe we can switch it up the next question. So not the same person's going first every time. Does that sound good to everybody? All right, let's go. Let's start with the Board of Ed. And we can start with Deb and then Liz, Corlin, and Ken. And these answers don't have to be, 20 minutes. Deb, why do you want to serve on the Board of Education?
Well, first of all, I am running for my 3rd term. So I have served on the Board of Education for the last 8 years. I have really enjoyed serving on the Board of Education. I initially decided to run because I'm a lifetime educator. I'm retired now, but I have served as a school counselor and as an assistant principal and the principal of East Lyme High School. And at the time when I ran originally, I was not all of those things. I was a school counselor. But as I became more and more involved in leadership in schools, being on the Board of Education in Waterford made even more sense to me, because I had a better understanding even of things like the budgeting process, hiring, all of the contracts, all of the things that go along with it. So right now, my thought in running again is I want to continue to bring my experience and my expertise to the board, but I also think that we are looking at a time when the fiscal side of boards of education everywhere are going to possibly be challenged a little bit more than they have been. And bringing my knowledge of budgeting to the table, as well as my knowledge of what's best for kids to the table, would be, I think, very helpful for the town. I enjoy serving the town of Waterford and the Waterford Board of Education. I think it's a really great group of people that serve currently, and I think the next group will also be great. I do have 2 children that graduated from Waterford High School, so this is my opportunity also to give back. They had a good experience and they're both pretty successful adults, so this is my chance to give back without having an agenda. I have no kids in the district, and this is really about what's best for all kids.
Hi, I'm Liz Mays, and shockingly, Deb and I have very similar backgrounds, so you're going to hear the same things. This is my 22nd year in the state of Connecticut as a high school counselor. I spent 8 years up in Lebanon at Lyman Memorial, and I spent the class 14 at East Lyme High School, where I am the department head. I also have a recent graduate, more recent than Deb. My daughter just graduated in 2025 from Waterford High School, where she had a very wonderful experience from Great Neck High School, Great Neck Elementary School, all the way through the high school, academically, athletically, and support-wise. She was very supported. So I have been a big fan of the Waterford School District. We moved down here for the Waterford School District from Colchester, because I feel that this community does a great job of supporting our students and all of our students, academically, social emotionally, mental health wise, students who have any kind of special needs. Our population here in Waterford has done a great job supporting them, and I just want to be a part of that. I feel that my student in particular was incredibly prepared for college, as she just left for her post-secondary experience. And so I want to make sure and ensure that every student in Waterford has a similar experience, whether or not they're college bound or whether they're planning on moving on in the trades, military, or going straight to work. I want to make sure that each of our students is prepared for whatever comes after high school. I think that's really, really important. And another very important thing for me is obviously supporting the mental health needs of our population, which are growing steadily, as we all know, here in the nation. So those are pretty much my biggest points.
I'm Corlin Webster. I have lived in Waterford my entire life. Graduated here. I persuaded my husband to stay in Waterford to raise our children here because I had such a great experience in Waterford. And I have worked in schools for almost 20 years as a speech and language pathologist. I've worked pre-K all the way to high school. I've also worked with the adult population, but school-wise, I feel like I have a lot of experience to bring as a resident, as a parent, and as an educator.
Being the last person, I feel like, could I just take everything you all said? We call ourselves the educators for education because we all have a strong background in education and a passion for our students, passion for our community, and a love for our community. You know, our community can't grow if our schools aren't strong. People continuously say, I want to go to a community that my kids are going to be well educated. For me, pretty much my whole life, except for a few times, I've lived in Waterford. My husband is from San Diego. He's fond of saying, I married Waterford. We weren't moving back. You know, he wasn't moving back, I should say. And my son graduated from Waterford High School, as I did. He was prepared. He went on to Sacred Heart University. He's now manages retirement portfolios. But for me, I've worked for over 30 years in higher ed and secondary education. And I, like the other ladies here, I want to see our students prepared. I want to see our students be able to learn, grow, and discover their best selves, to thrive. I also want to help and make sure that whatever pathway our students are on, that we support that. Because although I've been in higher ed, I know that not every student should go to college. Some of them should go into the trades. Some of them should go right to work. Some of them should go to the military. I want to make sure that we're prepared. I also want to make sure, although you know the Board of Ed doesn't have a lot to say in terms of finance, you know, we have a budget, and I've done budgets that are very, very small. When I was at St. Bernard School, it was a very small budget to a very large budget at Johnson & Wales University. But, you know, for the Board of Education, the influence that we can have on the budget might not be great, but we want to make sure that, you know, people like my neighbor can stay in their home and that taxes are not raised too much, but we are meeting the needs of everyone.
Thanks. All right, same question for the Board of Finance, and we'll go from Jerry to Ann to Josh. Why do you want to serve on the Board of Finance?
I have a funny answer that I won't give, but I do have a strong sense of wanting to be part of the civic life of the town. I moved to New London 41 years ago. I moved to Waterford 5 years ago. I ran the Jewish Federation of Eastern Connecticut for 35 years. I was on the board of TVCCA and I was on the board of ECSO. And we were a United Way agency, and I was on the board of the committee that distributed block grants to all the non-for-profits in Eastern Connecticut. So I have a lot of experience of preparing budgets, looking at budgets, reading budgets. I was on the Board of Finance in the City of New London, which was a frustrating place to be because you really couldn't do too much about the budget, but we did try to respond to what the citizens really wanted, even if the city council didn't agree with them. A key reason for me to serve is I want to make sure that the budget meets the needs of the people in the community and not the needs of the people at the top of the town hierarchy. I want the budget to really serve the people. And I have a good experience reading budgets and reading them quickly because I serve on the distribution committee of 2 large philanthropic funds. So I get a book that thick of proposals every year. I've been told that our budget book is that thick, but I think I'm ready to handle an even thicker budget book. Thank you.
Ann?
My name is Ann Peabody. Like many here, I grew up in Waterford. I graduated from Waterford High School. I went away to college. I was away for maybe 15 or 20 years. 25 years ago, I came back to live in the same house I grew up in. And in that time, I worked for the last probably 35 years in nonprofits. First at Mystic Seaport Museum, and then as director of the New Britain Youth Museums in New Britain. So I have a lot of experience with budgets. The museum I worked with in New Britain had a municipal grant that funded most of our operations. So I was charged with working with, let's see, the Board of Finance, the Finance Director, the Common Council, and every budget year, usually because they wanted to take away our money, not because they wanted to give us money. So I have some experience with that. And also I have my own business. Over the years, I started my own graphic design business and museum consulting business. I've worked with many different committees and boards on projects, both grant writing and where we, of course, have to have a budget. I know how to read a budget and analyze a budget, and I feel like that will make me a good candidate for the Board of Finance. And I also have a commitment to the town. My family's lived here for many generations, so that's about it.
Thanks.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I think I know most of you here in the audience, maybe a couple exceptions. My name is Josh Kelly, and I am running for Board of Finance because I love this town, and that's really what you've heard everybody else say. One of the things that's recharged me the most the last couple of months is just being able to walk around town and meet new people and see old friends and admire the architecture and the beauty, the natural atmosphere that we have here in town, the communities that we have. It's brilliant. And I feel like I have a lot to give back. So I, like everybody else, have a background in this area that I'm going into, specifically finance for me. I was the town administrator in Bolton, Connecticut. I was the town manager in Winchester, Connecticut before moving back to Waterford, having grown up here originally. And now, though none of the statements I make today pertain to the views of TVCCA, I am the CEO of TVCCA, our community action agency here in southeastern Connecticut. So I'm here to try and give back in the best way that I know how with these skills that I've developed. I am an incumbent member of the Board of Finance. I'm very grateful to the Waterford Democratic Town Committee for having put me up for that. I am this year running as an independent candidate, and I'm the only one up here right now that is not a Democratic candidate. But I believe that with the skills, knowledge, and abilities I have gained from my experiences, I have a lot to give back. But beyond that, I've taken the time through my studies, through the work that I've done to really take a look at what else could the state do, what else could this town do that's not even being discussed right now that should be on the table to help specifically keep Waterford accessible. We have a regressive tax structure in the state of Connecticut with our property taxes. I believe it's time for a change. I have studied policy around the way in which we're investing in our roads and infrastructures and how often we need to be replacing these items. We need to be investing more. I believe all of this is possible while keeping Waterford accessible and affordable to everybody regardless of their income status. And I'm really excited to bring that mind to the Board of Finance.
Thanks. All right, let's go back to the Board of Ed candidates. We'll start with Kim this time and go towards me. What improvements do you want to make to Waterford schools, and how do state mandates affect your ability to make local decisions?
Could you have started that depth on that other question? Can you repeat the question again?
Sure.
Please?
What improvements do you want to make to Waterford schools, and how do state mandates affect your ability to make local decisions?
Well, I mean, state mandates, and I'll take that part first. I think not being an incumbent, this is a little more difficult for me to answer. But state mandates are state mandates. I don't think we have a choice. If the state says we have to do something, we have to do something. We have to do it. And so I sort of that would be my answer to that piece. And reading the first piece.
What improvements do you want to make to Waterford schools?
What improvements? I met with the superintendent of schools. Because I'm not an incumbent, my child is no longer in the Waterford school system. I have friends whose children are in the school system. I've talked to people about the school system. So I met with him to kind of talk about it, because when I graduated from Waterford High School, we were not a very diverse community. I graduated with, I was in the class of 78, we had 303 students, and out of 303 students, 300 were white. There was one Asian student, one Native student, and one African American student. And he said, our community is very diverse now. And so for me, I want to make sure that every student feels that they're accepted, that they're supported. And he said, we also have lots of different languages that you didn't have when you were in school. And again, I want students, when they come into our schools, to feel that they can thrive and that we can support them so that they can get the education that they need. In addition to that, I want us to continue some of the programs that we do have and look for ways to strengthen those programs. So whether a student wants to go into the military, wants to go to work, I saw that we had a program with electric boat, and to start looking at ways we can strengthen ties within our business community and our school system. We can't do everything. It's sort of like you can't know everything. And so we need to now begin to look to community partners to help our students. So those are some of the things that I think are important. And I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, I'm going to echo what Kim said about the state mandates. State kind of knows what to do. I think on the board level, we have more impact on making policies. As for the improvements for Waterford, I think we're doing a great job in lots of areas. My oldest graduated last year, and I have twins that will graduate in 2028. One of the things that I was hopeful for them was kind of that trade, if they're not going to go to college after high school, what that would be. And Waterford kind of did that. So I work at the technical high schools and, Waterford High School is lucky enough to get one of those teachers, and we have a phenomenal, program for culinary, and, similarly, building those, community partnerships, you know, we have lots of resources to tap into.
Same. So state mandate, the board gets to draft their policies based on the state mandates, right? So I'm a big proponent of the upcoming, what I hope will be a cell phone ban. That would be my big push. Right now, we're tiptoeing in that arena by limiting cell phone usage, which is helpful. But again, as a school counselor, I'm sure you can't imagine how many problems are caused by the absolute insane amount of cell phone usage that the students are. They're just addicted. They're addicted to their social media. They're addicted to texting. 9 out of 10 problems that come into my office start with something that happened on the phone. The students are not using them appropriately, and the teachers are having such a tough time managing children who have a 3-second attention span and need their phones at all times. So that's a big one for me. I think Waterford does a great job with their mental health supports. I will say the fact that they have a school-based health center both at the Clark Lane Middle School and at the high school is huge. What I would like to see, and being very close with the counselors at the high school and middle school, I would love to see some proactive, which they do. I'd love to see an increase in the proactive kind of developmental lessons where people can go into the classroom and help teach resiliency and social skills, and start with the middle school, if not the elementary school, to make sure these kids are building the skills that they need to operate in this ever-changing world, which also at this point, as we all know, things aren't running smoothly in the nation, and that means they're also not running smoothly at home always, so parents are trying to navigate a lot, and I think the schools can be a huge resource for that.
So, state mandates. State mandates put a lot of pressure on the school system. Typically, they are unfunded, and sometimes they are unfunded and they are very expensive. So that is a challenge, I think, for the Board of Ed. Whenever the state mandate comes down, sure, we get guidance as far as policy is concerned, but now we have to spend money to make sure that we see that come to fruition. So I do think that that's an area where I have my own personal feelings about why the state does that, but that for budgeting purposes, that becomes a big deal sometimes. And we have to figure out how to balance that. As far as changes to the school, I feel like the school system is evolving. As has been mentioned before, there's been a huge increase in the diversity, especially around languages of the students. And the schools, I think, responding really well to that. I would like to see that continue. We also, in addition to reaching out to communities, have a partnership with East Lyme High School for a couple of classes. And I think that type of working together between school systems is really important, and I'd like to see them continue to do that and possibly grow some of those opportunities. So some kids in Waterford go to East Lyme for classes, and kids in East Lyme come to Waterford for classes. And I think as we move forward, and especially as our school populations get smaller, more collaborative work with other school systems is going to be necessary for our kids to continue to have the opportunities that we'd like them to have, because it just isn't possible when the school gets to be too small. The budget also gets, just doesn't go as far. So I would like to see, and again, I'm echoing what a lot of them already said, Waterford continue to work on the postgraduate opportunities that are not necessarily college bound, while at the same time continuing to provide kids that are going to college with an education that is going to prepare them for whatever secondary experience it is that they want. There is always a focus on things like test scores. That's not necessarily where I think the focus needs to be, as far as that's what the newspaper wants to hear about more so than that's what's really happening in schools. And I would love us to maybe take a step back and see how our alumni are doing. That might be another way to measure the success of the Waterford schools.
Thanks. All right, back to the Board of Finance. And we'll start with Josh and then Ann and Jerry. What is the main thing you want to accomplish as a member of the Board of Finance?
Great question. So in my short time on the Board of Finance, I've been trying to be a sponge, get caught up. I was on the RTM previously, but I've missed a few years while I was away doing some other work. And I've really needed to listen and hear about the projects of the day. So there are plenty of projects that are in front of us that need to be tended to. Some of them are already moving forward, like the firehouse, which was recently just approved. The Oswegatchie Firehouse, I should be more specific. But beyond that, what I really want to see change in the next 4-year term, really improving our 5-year capital improvement plan is a huge item for me. Right now, we technically meet the state minimum requirement in submitting a 5-year capital improvement plan and possessing that document. However, the document is not very clear. It's not posted individually clearly on our website. It's not very publicly friendly. There are so many things that could be straightened out, that could be made better for residents if only we put together these documents in a way that was designed to be read and understood by members of the public, instead of it being endlessly long spreadsheets that even sometimes members of the Board of Finance find hard to read. We need to make that publicly accessible. We need to make sure we're communicating with the public about what projects are coming up. When is your street getting done? When are we making sure that certain playgrounds and sports facilities are actually being improved? When are we going to take care of our schools that we paid tens of millions of dollars into? Are they going to be maintained? Right now, we're not putting enough energy, we're not putting enough of a spotlight on especially some of those school projects, and it shows. And I want to make sure that we're investing. But beyond that, one of the things I really want to do is actually use that position to advocate to the state to change the way that we do local property taxes. Right now, we have a very regressive local property tax system here in Connecticut. Every town is required to levy property taxes. We have no options. In other parts of the country, there are states that actually have given the opportunity to their localities to levy small sales taxes, small hotel taxes, small income taxes even, as a means of first trying to get income and revenue for your community from people who aren't from there, such as through sales taxes as people stop in and go to the gas station as they're driving to work, and in cases like hotel taxes in the event that people are staying in those communities. But no matter what, when you look at the property tax, the people who make the least in town pay the largest percentage of their income, and the people who make the most in town are paying the smallest percentage of their income on our local property taxes. We need to have a progressive tax system that really takes that into account. Jerry, I think, put it well, that we need a town budget that makes sure that the people who are at the top of our hierarchy are not the only ones served by our budget, but that also is true of our tax system. It's not something the Board of Finance can do unilaterally, but it is something that the Board of Finance can go to the state and say, we need more options in how we collect revenue to make sure that it's fair and equitable for our citizens, to make sure that it's more affordable for a diverse group of people to be in our town. So those are just a couple items. I can keep going, but I'm gonna pass it right on to you.
Thanks, John. Taxes are always something that I think is on everybody's agenda. The way that people are taxed in the town is a number of different variables that over the long term may be regressive or progressive, but I think the Board of Finance has a limited amount of ability itself to change that. How I would improve or look forward to making contributions is that personally I want to be part of the many decisions that happen for our future. That's where I feel I can make my best contribution. I feel that I'm a consensus builder, and I think that that's really important right now when we look towards all the different issues that we're looking at, whether it's development, whether it's our school system, whether it's our environment, whether it's safety or disaster planning or whatever it is. I feel that those are all issues that are really important right now, and that we need to, the decisions that we're making now are going to affect generations. When my family grew up here, my parents, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, they made decisions that are now made this town what it is. And that's why I want to be part of that. I wanna make the following generations decisions for them that help make this town a place where people wanna live. They wanna feel safe, they wanna have great neighborhoods. So those are my issues, and I think the Board of Finance spends a lot of time moving money around, I noticed that in the, but, they also make decisions and recommendations to the RTM, and I want a voice in that.
Thank you.
So, I think I'm a little less outward looking than Josh and maybe even Ann. I feel a tremendous obligation to the taxpayers. When you talk about state mandates, we have mandates, we have to pay property tax. And the property taxes, go to support our town. And the, Board of Finance needs to make sure that those funds are spent responsibly and well. I agree completely with Josh and Ann about the direction that I think our state should go. But I'm much more focused on examining the budgets and looking at the budgets and making sure that the money is being spent well and wisely and appropriately. The key attraction for me, believe it or not, and this might go a little bit to the joke I didn't make, is that the Board of Finance seems to be a board in this town that is collegial and cooperative, that Republicans and Democrats are not always fighting with each other about the budget, but are trying together to make it the best budget it possibly can be. I came from a town in London where the entire town was Democratic, and I was actually in many ways happy about that. But it wasn't an ideal situation at all. So here in our town in Waterford, we have two parties. They're functioning. Our first selectman is a Republican. The joke was I'm running so I could defeat a Republican, but that's really a joke. The reality is, when they asked me to serve on the Board of Finance and I asked questions, they say it's the most cooperative of all the boards in town. And I want to do that. I want to be able to work with other people, and I think it's important for us to allow the town of Waterford to continue to grow as a diverse town, to be an accessible town, to be a town where people with average income can come and live and have a home in our town and meet the tax burden and afford to buy the food and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's important for me as a resident of Waterford, but also I hope as a member of the Board of Finance, to keep our tax base as high as possible. So I'm thrilled that EB is gonna reopen the Waterford Crystal Mall. I'm thrilled that the nuclear power plant is gonna go on for another 30 or 40 years. I wasn't thrilled about the AI place they were gonna put in there. That's a data center, the data center. But I think it's important for us to keep the commercial tax base of our town as strong as possible so that we can keep the personal real estate tax in our town as low as possible. So
Thanks, Jerry. All right, moving back to the Board of Ed, this is probably a good question to start with Deb. I think you're the only incumbent on, right?
I am feeling it.
Okay. What are the current priorities for capital improvements or maintenance across Waterford schools?
That's a complicated question. Well, the schools are relatively new. I think the mindset of the town probably is that they are new. But they are not that new. As a matter of fact, the high school is the last one to open, and it opened over 12 years ago. So as far as capital improvements are concerned, I think, and I think Josh actually mentioned this, I think maintaining those buildings to like new is really, really important, because deferred maintenance just gets more and more expensive. If you don't know this, the football field was just redone, and the tennis courts were just redone, so those were some pretty big items that are finished. But I think that there are some upgrades that need to happen to the school. 13 years is a long time in, like, because we're headed toward 13, in the world of technology and security. And I think there are some upgrades that need to be done in the school to make sure that we have the best technology around security that we could possibly have, so that we know that our kids are safe, and we can keep track of what's going on with that. But I really think that maintaining the buildings that we have, they're beautiful buildings, but they are not that new anymore. And they are definitely at a point where if we don't start making sure that they are maintained, we're gonna end up with bigger bills down the road. That's my feeling.
Okay.
I don't know if we could answer that.
I don't know how well I can answer this, except
You've
to
been in
say,
schools.
I can,
Yeah.
yes. So with a fresh eye, it would be wonderful. I think part of the responsibility of Board of Ed members is to make sure you do tour the facilities, make sure you tour the buildings, and you see what's going on and happening within. And just from working in my own building, which needs a lot of work. East Lyme High School is definitely no Waterford High School or East Lyme Middle. We're not nearly at the same level. Our buildings are crumbling beneath us. I echo what Deb is saying, in that the amount of traffic that comes through a school, even if it's 12 years old, it's going to need consistent maintaining and consistent upkeep. So for me, it's just coming in and being aware of that, not being naive to the fact that we are going to have to continue to make improvements, which also includes spending money.
I would say, excuse me, I would say, to echo Deb and Liz, the buildings, but what I hear a lot is the high school, the turf, the tennis courts, a lot of high school. And I don't want to forget our elementary schools. My kids are now in high school and out of high school, and there's been discussion on sunshades since they were in elementary school for the playgrounds. And a lot of those playgrounds are beginning to deteriorate. So I would say improving the facilities.
I've worked at, I said I worked in higher ed, but I've also worked in secondary ed.
Equal hours.
Sorry, I've worked in higher ed and both higher ed and secondary ed. And the places I've worked at, one of the biggest things, the struggle they had is they kept having deferred maintenance. And that deferred maintenance for some of the institutions I've worked at has strangled the institution. And, you know, I think our kids deserve a place that's safe. They deserve good technology. But I would echo that deferred maintenance piece, whether it's your playgrounds, your parking lots, you know, all of those things need to be taken care of. If they're not taken care of, not only do we have a situation where students are not best served and teachers are not best served, we also can run into a situation where someone can get hurt there. And then now we have another issue that we can have lawsuits. So I think addressing the deferred maintenance is crucial. And like I said, I lived it, and my son actually lived every school that he has attended in Waterford was being refurbished. So every single one. So he graduated from the high school and then it got finished.
That's fine. All right, Jerry, start with you for this one. How do you best engage the public in understanding Waterford's budget priorities before an RTM vote?
Well, I would actually defer to Josh's idea, which is that we need to make the budgets readable and clear to the average resident in Waterford. It's not called the Board of Finance because it's interesting. It's
Board of fun stuff.
but the fact is, a budget is, to state the obvious, an attempt to balance income and expenses. That's basic budget 101. And the question is how to make the expenses most effective and how to maximize income. But I think a Board of Finance, its responsibility is to make the expenses as effective as possible. That what we're paying for is what we're getting. One of the hardest things is feeling responsibility for other people's monies. And you need to feel that responsibility. You know, this money that we're budgeting came from us. It's our money, and it needs to be spent judiciously and appropriately, not necessarily frugally. I'm not advocating for, you know, don't do this and don't do that. I'm not advocating for deferring any maintenance that needs to be done, but I am advocating for clear explanations of why something is in the budget and numbers that people can read and understand.
Thank you.
My turn. I'll add to what Jerry said, in that I think budget is really a plan. It's a plan for the future year. You use last year, you look at what your projects are for this year, you might have a contract or change or whatever it is. And if you can make that plan as clear and as transparent as possible, then that's a good thing. And you're hopeful that when you make that plan, that it's gonna come out at the end and be balanced. And if it doesn't, you have to ask those questions. I think a lot of what the Board of Finance does is ask the different departments questions about where they're spending their money, how they're spending their money. The deferred maintenance thing, I just watched the Board of Finance meeting on the video this afternoon actually, and that was one of the issues that was being discussed. It was deferred maintenance for the library of all places. And you know, having two big old buildings to oversee during my years as a director of a museum, it always comes back to get you if you don't fix something when you need to fix it, even on a small scale. Whether it's the roof or it's the roads, or it always costs more money if you don't do it when you know. And part of that is having a good long-range plan for your organization or your town. And I know, I listened to the fire chief say that that was one of his priorities, to put together a plan for the infrastructure for our fire departments. And I hope that that happens, because I think that's needed. That's just one thing that came up. So I think Public Works really he was talking about all the deferred maintenance that we have, and we need to address that.
Oh, and would you mind repeating the question?
Sure. Where was that?
Sorry if you want to skip me.
How do you best engage the public in understanding Waterford's budget priorities before an RTM vote?
Great question. And thank you for repeating it. The budget's about values from my perspective. It's about what we value as a community. Obviously, all of the different departments that we have are important, but to what extent, where are the changing needs at any given point in time, and so forth. So in order to make sure that the budget is clearly communicated to the public, we also need to listen and make sure that the budget reflects what the public wants to see. So in order to best communicate that, I think that the Board of Finance, as well as the RTM, can do a better job, not strictly the volunteers themselves, though we have many, and I know that they care very deeply about transparency and accessibility and all of these things. We can do a better job of meeting the public where they are. The public is not in the newspaper all of the time. The public is not just on Facebook. The public is not looking at the bulletin board in the library all of the time. We need to make sure that information is shared in each of these places, and we need to make sure, just as others have said today, and that I referenced earlier. We need to make sure that that information isn't in some long spreadsheet that you have to decipher and know some code to understand. We need to make sure that the clear salient points and what is being valued in that budget is being very transparently communicated to the public in the medium where you're already digesting your information. It means doing a little bit more outreach, maybe through the newspaper, maybe through social media, but not just using one avenue. And I'll leave it at that.
Thanks. Okay, this is probably best to start with Deb.
Sorry.
It works for me. Sounds good to me.
Start in the middle.
Yeah, start in the middle. Probably won't be able to.
Well, I mean, okay.
We could then vote.
Let them
if
choose.
we want them to answer.
You want to do it that way? This is actually from President. In part, it's anyway. Waterford's one of 7 Connecticut school districts participating in a state-run AI pilot program this year, which is overseen by the State Department of Education and designed.
Could you use the microphone, please?
Yeah, sure.
It's very hard to hear you.
I'm sorry.
Is that better?
Okay.
Waterford is one of 7 Connecticut school districts participating in a state-run AI pilot program for the 2024-25 school year. The program is overseen by the Department of Education and is designed for students in grades 7 through 12. What do you believe we should be rolling out AI over the next few years, all the way to our youngest learners?
Deb, I'll start.
Okay.
So I was able to see the AI presentation at the the last Board of Education meeting. And I was actually quite impressed with how thorough it was. I do believe there is value in AI for teachers and for students. On the teacher aspect, in the world of special education, there's a lot of differentiation needed. And I think AI can help teachers to do their jobs quicker, because with all these different learners in the classroom, it's hard to make 18 different plans. So using AI in that sense is good. And then on the student realm, I think when using AI, I think when we look at it as assistive technology, so to help support student learning, support student generated work, I do think there's value. Having it go down to elementary school, I think when we introduced Chromebooks and internet, there was this scaffolded rollout. I don't know how I feel about that just yet. I think if my children were in elementary school right now, I would not be comfortable with it. But that's not to say in 10 years we won't have this really in the bag.
Any volunteers? You want to go next?
So I was also at that presentation with Corlin, and I will just say that the staff at Waterford has done an amazing job at preparing and trying to roll these things out. So kudos to them for sure. I think the most important thing with AI is education. So educating the children the students on what is appropriate and inappropriate. Again, in my role, watching students fail or succeed based on what they are capable of producing on their own versus producing with help. And not just assistive technology help, but they have to be able to still come up with their own concrete ideas and thoughts. And that comes into play as early, I feel like, as elementary school. So just educating the students on what is appropriate and inappropriate and how to use it to their best advantage without overusing it. And for the teachers, I've seen it's very effective. It can be a very effective tool for differentiating for sure, for coming up with lesson plans when you are trying to come up with original. You don't want to rely on the same thing you've been doing, so you're trying to come up with innovative ideas. We have found it at least to be an effective tool in our school district.
So I think that we are really in the early stages of seeing how this is gonna impact schools. I think that, I agree with Liz, there's a lot of education that has to happen. We are responsible for preparing kids for their life past high school, so we have to kind of take hold of this and help them learn how to use it well and use it responsibly so that they're prepared to do that when they go on to the next level. I'm not sure how, and I'm gonna agree with Corlin, I'm not sure how I feel about it at the elementary level, but I would say the same thing about cell phones. And if kids are bringing cell phones into schools in the elementary school, then the schools have to deal with it. If elementary school kids are using AI at home, then the schools are gonna have to respond to that somehow, because it becomes their responsibility then to teach kids how to use it responsibly, ethically, all of those different things that go along with that powerful a tool. So I think probably we're gonna need some time to kind of observe that and see how that's gonna roll out as far as the younger kids are concerned. I think the high school kids are probably about 10 steps ahead of us with a lot of it already. So, you know, I think that working with the 7 through 12 and really educating them about what the opportunities are, what the responsibilities are, how do you use this as a tool but not as something that pretends it's you. And it's going to be very challenging, but it's a necessary part of what we need to make sure that it's part of their education, because they are going to use it in college and in whatever life it is that they have after that. It's something for all of us to think about too, and you know, I think we're still kind of grappling with all of it a little bit, and it will take a little bit of time before we know exactly what that's going to look like.
I was not at the presentation. I went online and to look at the presentation, and I thought it was very well put together. Like my other colleagues, I am a little concerned when we talk about the lower grades. I'm just not really comfortable just yet with that. But I also know that the students that are in middle school through high school, they are probably already using it and using it much better than we are. And just like when we started to have students that were using Facebook and Snapchat and all of the other social media things, that we had to educate them on the dangers and we had to educate them on usage. I think we're going to have to do that. I think it's really important that whatever we do and however this all rolls out.
Jim from out there.
So I can talk and pass with water, so if things don't work out, you've got a job for me to, but however this pans out, we know the genie's out of the bottle. We can't put it back in, but we can educate students on the best usage, just like we can educate ourselves. I mean, how many times have you opened, if you use Facebook or social media, and there's somebody that you know, and all of a sudden, you don't look anything like they really look, because you just saw them at Stop and Shop, and that was not them at all. They have just made themselves this AI creature, or they have this house that you know they don't live in. And they say, look at my new living room, but AI created that. So, I mean, it's everywhere, but I think it's incumbent on us to figure out ways to manage it and to continue to teach our students the things that they really need to learn. I went around talking to people, and as I listened to the constituents, they were talking about, you know, it's really important that students can critically read. Can they critically write? Can they think? Can we make sure that they know all of the basics? So we don't want using AI to suck out that criticalness, because they're going to have to begin to make decisions, and they're going to be solving problems. You okay, Liz? They're going to be solving problems that we don't have now. We don't even know they exist, and we have to prepare our students to do that. So,
Thanks.
passing the water on that.
All right.
I want to
Oh yeah, go ahead.
weigh in on AI for a second.
Please do, Jerry.
To address Josh's suggestion. I don't know if any of you have seen it, but you could have AI take a spreadsheet and turn it into English.
Depends on how messed up the spreadsheet is.
Somebody has to know what they're doing, but AI can help make complicated things understandable. You just have to be careful that they're accurate.
I was going to say, you're right, they can do that, Jerry, but those critical thinking skills and those critical skills that students need to have.
Oh, yeah.
You could take whatever you want. A student could put in an essay, they could put in a letter, put into AI goes in there it is for you. But if you don't read it, and you don't understand what it's saying, it might not be saying exactly what you want it to say.
That's right.
And there's lots of dangers, so.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Kind of like spell check.
like
All
spell
right.
check, right, for and from.
Exactly, I had that today.
Or you're
For and
texting,
from.
and it says something you don't mean.
Yes.
I think this one starts with Josh. The Board of Finance is empowered to approve special appropriations and transfer unexpected funds. How would you best decide when those transfers are justified?
So I don't think that a lot of people, because why would you? None of you have probably, well, very few people in the room have actually like worked for a town or necessarily wanted to be on the Board of Finance, and I think some of us are wondering if we want to be on the Board of Finance now. But what I will say is, you know, when it comes to these transfers, it's all about the bottom line. A municipal budget by state law has to be balanced. You have to be ready to take in as much as you're spending, and most of the time there's some amount that's left over. But the goal is to get as close as possible there, so you're not overtaxing the population and putting too much money in the bank account, but you're not taking in so little that you're not actually spending on all of the proper items that you need to spend money on. The transfers come in when one bucket of money that you thought was going to be enough is suddenly not enough. And that's where those values start to come in, because I'm just making up an example, but if you get towards the end of the year and you've got a police budget and you're not going to be able to make that last payroll unless you transfer some money, you have to now choose what's the most important thing here in this budget, what are the least important things, and where can we take money from? Luckily for the Board of Finance, those recommendations come to us before, or are prepared before they get to the Board of Finance. So we are not the ones who are making the value decisions. That's really the first selectman who puts it through the Board of Selectmen, and then the Board of Finance, and then the RTM, or potentially, depending on what kind of appropriation or transfer you're looking at, it may be more streamlined than that. But we have a very complicated procedure with lots of different eyes on it to make sure that whether it's an appropriation or a transfer, it's only being made in line with state uniform guidance. It's only being made in instances where we are not going to be able to maintain a certain budget. And we are not impacting that bottom line without other procedures being impacted, where we would actually make a special appropriation out of the fund balance for the town, basically the rainy day fund, and put more money into the system. Or, in fact, some towns have had to, especially during COVID, levy additional taxes at different points in time in order to make sure that they are making all of their payments. It's not easy to know when the right time is to transfer and when it's not to transfer. Most transfers are very standard. It's something, dozens of transfers could happen in a given month in a town. It's not something to be afraid of. One of the things that I am most concerned about with the Board of Finance and the way that our financial structure is set is that it is not exactly the most transparent. When we appropriate money, for example, or when a proposal comes forward within our capital improvement plan, as part of the town's budget, that plan isn't just reviewed and approved before the budget's adopted. That plan then has to go through the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and RTM again, sometimes multiple times, in order to make sure that all of the proper appropriations are made, all of the proper expenses have been made. You know, streamlining that process is something that I'm very interested in. Making sure that it's very clear what we're going to spend money on upfront when the budget's adopted is really important to me. And not playing the shell game of, well, we're going to take money out of the budget, but now we're going to do a special appropriation from the rainy day fund to make sure that this proposed project is able to get on its own 2 feet. We should have a 5-year capital improvement plan that's encompassing of all town projects, all Board of Education projects. We should not be in a position where we're picking up projects halfway through the year and saying, well, you know, enough people are making noise about this project, it's time to give it some money. We should be saying, this is the way that we're going to invest in our town improvements. We are thinking about this far enough in advance that we are avoiding that deferred maintenance cost, that we are investing in such a way that we're decreasing our overall expenses, and at the end of the day, make sure that we are investing our money in an orderly manner so that we're avoiding increased costs down the road. To answer your question, no easy way to say it. But there's a lot that goes into these transfers and appropriations.
You want the other?
Yeah,
Oh,
You want anybody else to say anything?
go ahead.
Could you repeat?
Sure.
your question?
The Board of Finance is empowered to approve special appropriations and transfer unexpended funds. How would you decide when those transfers are justified?
Well, I think that, what we found, at least I observed, is that things come up that, whether it's because of deferred maintenance, or if it's something such as COVID, or, so I think that has a little bit to do with the timing. I also know that the town has a finance director who also has input into when things are timed in terms of, from what I gathered, moving money around so that it doesn't impact the taxpayer. Basically, I think those are the issues that we deal with in the question when we put the budget together. I don't really know. What
So-
to say, Josh, I have a problem.
How many of you go to Waterford Beach? Raise your hand. Okay. So I go to Waterford Beach 5 mornings a week, 52 weeks a year almost. And how many of you remember the woman that sat in a wheelchair at the entrance to Waterford Beach as you're leaving the parking lot, letting people know that she couldn't get to the beach because there was no sidewalk for her wheelchair to roll on? And she got a sidewalk bill. So I think it's important for the Board of Finance and for the town in general to respond to individual initiatives from residents of our town who need something addressed. And it was wonderful that that was done. We also have a responsibility to understand, to learn from what the screw up was, so that we don't screw up again. So if something was under budgeted, why was it under budgeted? If something was over budgeted, why was it over budgeted? And don't do it again. So you need to learn. It's a dynamic process that goes from year to year, but you also need to be willing to be responsive to citizens who come and say, the windows in my kid's classroom are letting in too much cold air, and I have to bring a heavy sweater to school every day. You gotta get that fixed. And the answer is you gotta get it fixed. So you've gotta put extra money into that. Or, I can't get to this beach, and this is our town beach. So you've gotta make it possible for my wheelchair to roll down to the beach. So I'm of two minds. I think you need to be responsive, but you need to learn as well, year to year, what's going on.
Thank you. That is all the questions that I have.
Oh, good.
So, I don't know how you guys feel about audience questions. I mean, or if there even are any, but this would be the time for that.
Is there a microphone? Sir?
Oh, yeah, here.
I don't know where to stand. So first of all, thanks for running. I'm sorry that there's no Republicans here tonight. Balance the tables, but I'm glad that you all showed up to take questions. I really appreciate that. All right, so the AI question was for me.
Wait, can you identify yourself?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, Bob Kine. Live on Dimmick Road here in Waterford, grew up here. And I'm on the trustees board for the library, and I work on the Rec and Park Commission. All right, so I'm a parent of an in-district first grader. And I attended the most recent Board of Ed meeting where the district's IT leaders discussed the upcoming rollout for student-facing AI. I work with AI every day, both the simple stuff and the advanced tools that you use for drug discovery. I was not impressed. I thought it was kind of a little bit of a light touch. And I think the most shocking part of it for me was that the board didn't ask any questions One person asked for a copy of the slides, which I thought was good, but there are no questions. This is the topic of our time in education. No questions. Stunning. But my hope is that the board had their questions answered in a different venue. But for me as a parent sitting in the room, that was shocking. So that's the background. But I'd like to know a bit more about this experiment. So there were surveys done that talked about how companies want to hire people with AI experience. But this is an experiment. We don't really have information on outcomes at this point. So that's why I was concerned about rolling it out to kindergartners. My kid's not gonna have a cell phone until 8th grade. And you're gonna put an AI machine in my son's hand? Come on. So, if the district does go down this path and data emerges nationally that AI may be leading to worse outcomes for students, will you be willing to consider a course correction if you are serving on the Board of Education? This can be challenging since we as a district enter into medium and long-term contracts with Google for both their hardware platforms and their Gemini platform. So be interested in your thoughts on that. And thank you again for coming out.
Can I clarify your question? So you're asking us if we found out, we go into this wholesale and we go, oh my gosh, there's this huge study that this is horrible for our kids. Are we gonna stop it? Is that the question?
Yeah, despite a heavy monetary investment.
So when I first moved to Connecticut, I lived in New London and I was the product of new math. New London got new math and kept new math because they made a monetary investment in new math. The rest of the nation dropped new math within a year. New London did not drop new math. I talked to my former elementary school teachers and they talked about how this whole generation of kids that I was a part of didn't know math at all. It wasn't until I was in college and in high school, I had Glenn Rupert was my math teacher. You know Mr. Rupert, he was great. He sat down and helped me, but I was terrified of math. And it was until I became an adult that I became more comfortable. So for me, if you showed me studies that this was hurting our kids, and I think I could speak almost for everybody here, if it's hurting our kids, we can do something about it. Despite the monetary investment. And I feel really strongly about that because my personal experience was I came into the Waterford school system in 5th grade and I was lucky that I had teachers to help me. But it was a lifelong struggle to learn math. But had New London dropped new math when everybody else did, I don't think I would have had that problem. So for me, yeah, I would stand up and say, we can't hurt our children, so I don't know if anybody else would. I mean, I think that's pretty.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a lot to learn still. I think people's idea of AI is very focused. It sounds like you have a great background. There are so many different aspects of AI. Generative or creating images or whatever, so I don't know where it would go at that level. From my perspective, what I tell my students is that they are growing up in such a difficult time because of AI, whereas they see, oh, it's something to make work easier, but these kids going to jobs, they're going to be put on the spot. They're going to have to really become articulate with their answers because, did you come up with that or did AI come up with that? And they're really going to have to be able to prove their skills. So I kind of look at it as that with my students of don't put all your eggs in that basket because it's not going to work out for you.
I think because we've already used this phrase, it's tough to put the genie back in the bottle. That once we go down this path, I am not naive to the reservations that you have. I think that we are all 4 of us incredibly student-centric, and I would go to bat for any of my students. So if this was harmful to them, of course I would not be a proponent of moving forward with it. But also, we will have limited reach in some ways based on some of the relationships that we have, or based on how long we need to compile data, or what is, there's so many factors that go into it that, well, of course, I would want what's best for the students. I'm not naive to the fact that I might not have the control. I won't make that decision. Even on a board of education, that's going to be a large discussion, and if there are policies, it's just, you're right, it is going to be a very, interesting road with this proposal.
First of all, thank you for not giving your child a cell phone.
Yes, thank you, and I hope it works.
Good luck.
Eighth grade.
But that does bring up what we kind of mentioned before too. Just because you are doesn't mean everyone else isn't. So I think there's a push right now with cell phones, which is long overdue. And maybe we should have been paying attention to that a lot more seriously along the way. And I think that's one of the things that we're going to have to do with AI. And I understand that I agree with everybody here. If it's harmful to kids, then we're not going to be supportive of it. But hopefully we don't let it get that far. Hopefully we're really paying attention to it. Maybe it's something that has to become incorporated into board goals so that we're getting reports back and that we're really studying this as we go along. So that we're not that far down the road that we are financially invested and have done things to kids where now we've got to increase other supports. So that would be my thought, is like, I'm really happy you're bringing this up, because maybe this needs to be something that we're talking about on a fairly regular basis and reading what's out there and paying attention.
Thank you. Sorry, if I may, just a quick comment. I also want to say, from the Board of Finance perspective, I think it's important that we talk about what it means to innovate and try and achieve better outcomes. We can't, never mind Board of Education, we can't do that in the police department. We can't do that in our public works department if there isn't a level of change. You have to try something new in order to innovate and find a better outcome and try and do something in a better, more efficient, more effective manner. I hope that no matter what day and age that might be, and whoever may be on the Board of Finance at that point, if our Board of Education ever found information that suggested that changing course, despite having made significant financial investments, that we could improve the way that our students are being taught and that they're being educated, I hope that they would say yes every time, that we will make that change, that we will change course, and that the Board of Finance will back them up. They need to make sure that they know that we, as a town, are willing to invest in innovation, that we're willing to try new things in order to get better outcomes, but that we're also willing to change course as a financial board when they've tried and sometimes failed. Edison, there isn't just one way to make a light bulb. There's 999 ways not to make a light bulb and one way to make it. Sometimes you're going to have ideas that aren't perfect, but as a town, as local communities, not just ours, but all around the state and the country, we're where innovation happens in these school systems, and I hope everybody will bear that in mind.
Thanks. Oh, we got a lot. All right. Is this all right with you guys? I mean,
The game doesn't start till
Bring it on.
Do you want to set it to a certain number of questions? Or?
I don't care.
Yeah, I don't care. I think it's the element.
I want to thank everybody for being out here this evening, but my name is Mike Malley. I live on Forest Street in Waterford. I have a question for the Board of Education persons. You hear anecdotally that there's a lot of issues with people graduating from high school not being able to do basic math and English. What is your perception of the Waterford School District, and if there is an issue, what would you do to address that?
Do you want to? There's another mic. If you want to grab it and turn.
Oh, so you can pass
Just
out.
hold the button
Yeah.
down and turn it on.
Oh, you want me to use it? Just so I,
I'm sorry that we're not using our teacher quizzes.
So, from personal experience, with my recent 2025 graduate, the Waterford School District did a great job preparing her to write at the next level, to analytically be able to read what she is and evaluate what she is reading. However, that's not every student, right? So not every student, school does not come easy for every student. And so there's gonna be a huge disparity. I mean, there's a huge disparity in class levels that occur from kindergarten through 12th grade, which Waterford does a great job of differentiating instruction to ensure that every student has those basic skills when they leave. I think that our reading and math scores are competitive in the state as far as where we land. And I know that there's a good push on making sure that we have the staff with the amount of interventionists that we now have within the school district from, again, K through 12, making sure that those students are capable of those skills by the time that they graduate. However, I think that there can always be more work done in that area to ensure that every student is prepared when they leave. Was there more to your question?
Yeah, well, I think so, although it's a little vague as to, really what we're looking at here as actual outcomes from the school. But, I just had that perception that you talked about new math and there's other, teaching modalities that are used. It seems like it's more focused on the social aspect and the developmental aspect of the person rather than giving them the basics to take off, for themselves to learn. And it just seems like I'm not an educator, but it seems like the educational system in the last 20 years has kind of shifted that way. I don't know if it's trying to make it easier for everybody to cope, but, that's a perception.
I think that Deb brought it up earlier too. Tracking our alumni data would be really important in a situation like this to see what is going on with our graduates. Where do they end up? Are they being successful in employment and or college?
Is there any generalized testing that are done, say, on seniors before they graduate to see what levels they're at?
Yeah, so in Connecticut, the standardized testing is the SAT. And so all 11th graders will take the SAT, and that's now the standardized test. There used to be SBAC, et cetera. So the elementary schools still have a form of that. And then we also have a national science exam that they're given in 11th grade. So that's our means of trying to get those numbers, but I don't feel that's always an accurate representation of how students are doing because standardized tests aren't for every student, right? So Waterford does a nice job of at least preparing them by offering up practice tests in these forums to try to get the kids ready to take them, but they're really not for every kid.
Waterford Schools looks at data all the time. Each of the schools has its own data team, and they're always looking at not just the SAT or SBAC for the younger grades, but other tests that happen throughout the course of the year that are more formative type tests. I do think that it's very difficult to ensure that 100% of the kids are going to graduate at a particular level. But I do think that they do a very nice job of trying to put out that net and make sure that every kid is caught in it somehow, and that they are helping them progress from wherever it is that they are to as far as we can get them before they graduate. I do think there are a lot of challenges right now. The social emotional side of things is definitely different than it used to be. And some of that gets in the way of kids being able to learn, so that's why there's been more of an increase in the supports in that area. The school system is dealing with over 100 different languages being spoken in the schools. That presents its own different challenge as far as educating kids who don't speak English right away. So there's a wide variety of things, but I do think that there has been a real focus in the last couple of years in really looking at data and putting in place some new things or some different approaches to things to try to increase how well the kids are doing on in the ways that we can test them. You're always also going to have the kid that's not going to take the test. So that's always a little bit of a challenge. But I do think that's an area that Waterford does its best to try to make sure that that is not happening.
And just to add to that, we didn't bring it up, but there are special populations as well where we are accommodating and modifying curriculum for those students to make sure we're evening the playing field. So there are academic plans offered for those students. So it's not just differentiation or interventions, it's actually modifying or accommodating the curriculum to make sure that those kids can access it.
Yeah, I guess I have to understand that, but it sounds like you're actually, kind of modifying to come up with a better outcome, but that's okay, I don't want to.
I see what you're saying.
I think you had a question?
I did. I'm Deborah, I live on Riverside Drive. I do feel that the Waterford schools have slipped. I'm constantly hearing about how great East Lyme and Old Lyme are, and how everybody wants to move to those areas because they want to go to those school systems. So I especially am interested in what you guys have to say because you are at East Lyme. What is it that East Lyme's doing that is so great? And then just another comment, so I have a relative that has a big beautiful house that's getting ready to go on the market. And the real estate agent is saying that we can't price the house quite as high as Old Lyme or East Lyme because the demand is not there. So I think again, the school system is now translating it into the value of our properties. So it's a real concern for me.
So I will not disparage the East Lyme School District at all, I promise. But that is kind of a false narrative. So I think that our reputation is built on apples and oranges almost. So in the East Lyme School District, for instance, we're very data driven, as Deb Kelly already said. And so therefore all of the statistics that you read about in US News and World Report, when we're compared to other high schools, again, apples and oranges. So East Lyme High School, for instance, requires that all students who take an AP class take the AP exam. We do not require that here at Waterford High School. Therefore, we have a higher percentage of AP scores than they do at Waterford High School because we require it. That is, to me, I don't know that every student should be required to take an AP exam following a class. I think that should be a personal decision. If the student feels prepared to take an advanced placement test and then chooses to pay for an advanced placement test and then chooses to send those scores to a college, I feel that's a personal decision, which is what they do here at Waterford. And at East Lyme, again, that is false. So it's almost false data because we can't compare. And also at East Lyme, I will say, our reading and math SAT scores are lower and have been lower than Waterford's reading and math SATs for the past couple of years. Or at least on and off, math for sure. And I will say again, because my own child just graduated, and in my office I know, we had far fewer students who were accepted to prestigious colleges from East Lyme High School than they did from Waterford High School. So you have got a reputation in East Lyme that is what we've been leaning on. And it's been a solid reputation that it still stands. But in reality, it's not the reality. Waterford is doing just as well, if not better, in many areas. Maybe not football. I'm not sure. Listen, we had a good year.
And watch out for your realtor, because your realtor wants to lower the price of your house to sell it quickly. So don't rely on a realtor to evaluate school systems.
Actually, I saw the comps and it's true.
Yeah, I think there's more to the real estate than just, the perception than just, and the perception of the schools, but also the community. Do you want to say anything else about that? I may have misspoken.
No. What Liz is I think that there is a misperception between the two towns, and I think it's based more on historical data than it is on current data. I think that maybe our responsibility is to get that narrative out a little bit better, more transparency around how well our kids are doing. I think we all have had kids graduate from the school system and go on to exactly what they wanted to do and the schools that they wanted to get into. That's not the only measure of success either, so you have to keep that in mind. But when I moved here 24 years ago and we were told that East Lyme was the town that you should move to for school systems, we didn't. I worked in the East Lyme schools as a school counselor at the time, and I know that my children would have probably, I don't mean to disparage the East Lyme schools either, but one of them in particular would have been crushed by the stress that those kids feel very differently, I think, than Waterford does. And I think that has to be taken into consideration too. I think that we do a really good job in Waterford of educating kids without putting that level of stress on them, like making them take an AP test at the end of a class that maybe they don't want to take or don't need to take, or are feeling good about just taking that test and it's stressing them out. And I would be very, very just to underscore what Liz said, looking at US News and World Report, you're comparing apples, oranges, pears. Every school does things differently, so it's not really a very good indication of how schools compare to one another.
You got two of us here who chose to move to Waterford, who both worked in the East Lyme School District. So I think that says a lot.
Anybody else?
I think my only response, in case anybody has questions about Waterford, sorry. I think my only response from the college end, if anybody has questions about Waterford not making students take advanced placement tests, I think an advanced placement class is a wonderful preparation for college. And I know my own son took advanced placement classes at Waterford and wasn't ready to take the test, but it really helped him when he got to college. The other piece is you can take an advanced placement class, you can take the test, you can score between 1 and 5, 5 being the highest, and score a 5, but that doesn't mean that the institution that your child is going to will take that as a credit. So I think it's a good preparation, but my nieces went to East Lyme, and the stress that they were under was just, it was horrible. It was very, very difficult. My son did equally as well in Waterford and really did not have the stress. So that's just anecdotally.
And I think that stands for Lyme Old Lyme too. I didn't want to, yeah, you had more, you didn't just use East Lyme.
Right.
But I think that stress level perpetuates the coastline.
Ray Peabody, full disclosure, and Peabody is my aunt. This is a question for everybody. I would like to, first of all, thank you all for your time. Board of Education, you guys have mentioned different other things other than college, trades, going straight to work. I appreciate that, and thank you for that. I'm a 30-year tradesman myself in the Painters Union. My question, it was also alluded to, we have some big projects in town. I think this applies equally to the Board of Education and the Board of Finance. One of them being the rehab of Southwest School. Learned the multicultural magnet school is going to be moving there. Somebody mentioned the firehouse, a couple of big projects in town. Project labor agreements is something that's close to me as a union member, 30 years. Project labor agreements are about the only way to ensure that local people work on local projects and that money spent returns to the local area. So anybody from either department that wants to answer, would you support project labor agreements both on these big projects we have coming up and in the future?
I'm happy to jump in. I don't know if you want to pass the mic down. Whenever it comes to a large project, there are a lot of things, thank you very much. There are a lot of things that we need to do as a community to make sure that it's affordable, but also that we are looking out for the workers who are involved with the project. And a project labor agreement is absolutely something for those larger projects that I'm going to agree with every single time. I'm not sure what everybody else's status is, and I won't speak to it, but labor matters to me. As a former union member myself, as somebody who's been involved, I sought out union endorsements this time around and really dug deep and talked to them about what are the issues that they're facing, and project labor agreements is certainly at the top of that pile. I'm very proud to be endorsed by 6 different unions around the state. But when it comes to lining up these different projects, we need to make sure that they're competitively bid. We need to make sure that we are getting the best rates possible for the people of the town in the way that we are repaying the debt that we're taking on. I don't think, and one of the things that I recently have been harping on is as we talk about information being shared with the people of the town in the places where they are, and trying to reach people where they are, it's really important to make sure that people have an understanding of what is the impact to that bottom line. How is this going to impact your taxes so that you can make a really rational decision as you come to a Board of Finance meeting or Board of Ed meeting and advocate for your project or something that you're interested in, or perhaps advocate against. It's important for us to keep an eye out for that bottom line, to think about the many different avenues that we have to take in revenue to issue debt, so that we are saving money, but at the same time making sure that we are looking out for the people who are in our community, to make sure that the agreements that we're signing are requiring that the companies are hiring people locally and aren't outsourcing a whole bunch of work to people who are living outside of our community, and overall giving a fair shake on any project, any union construction project that's happening here in town.
Is there another question?
Somebody wants to go.
I just would say from the Board of Ed standpoint too, I think it's really important that we've all talked about it, as you mentioned, making sure that we're partnering with the community in whatever facet that can be. So running the programs that we're running in Waterford, whether they're our automotive collaborative programs or our EMT collaborative programs that we're doing with other schools, or whether we're working with local exposed to those, whether it's through, this painting project or whatever it is. If the school district or the Board of Education is aware of those projects, then we can also make sure to encourage our students to participate in them. So I think that's a huge responsibility of educators.
I saw one hand go up over here, right?
Hello, Chris Saccaroli. Where I live, Bella Vista Street, Quaker Hill. Full disclosure, I'm related to one of the panelists. So my question is for both groups of you. First of all, as someone who is a native of Waterford and someone who has sat on a volunteer board before, I truly do thank you for putting yourself out there to represent us. If that's not lip service, I've done it. It's not fun at times. You all are asking us to support you in your candidacy to represent us. What I've heard across the board today, and this just might be my interpretation, is that you all seem to be deferential. The Board of Education sets policy. So to answer this person's question, if you wanted to change the policy, that's for you to do. Not to say that you can't do that. When you're asked whether or not you would agree to transfers and things like that, we have a budgetary process where different bodies select a process, select a budget, and then it's beholden upon the executive branch to fulfill that budget as it was directed by our elected representatives, and not to be deferential to department heads or the first selectman, right? So I wanted to bring that to your attention and hope that you all realize that you're asking us to support you to represent us, not to be deferential to a superintendent or the first selectman or department heads. And I would just like your feedback on my comments.
I think I made it clear that my responsibility, I feel that my responsibility is to the taxpayers of Waterford and not to the people who are presenting the budget. So I am not shy about defying authority.
Me either.
I said before that I feel that part of my responsibility is to ask questions. And that means listening to the people of Waterford and trying to represent them to the best of my ability. And I agree with Jerry. It is our responsibility to ask questions, to analyze what we've been given, and to try to make the best decisions possible to maintain the services that we provide in this town.
Thank you. Absolutely. I know many of you here in the audience are probably not going to be surprised to hear that I am willing to speak out when needed. And it's a balancing act, right? It's a balancing act between what we're elected to do and what, for example, the first selectman's elected to do, and understanding where those lines lie. I don't think that in this town we always do a good job of making sure that our elected boards and commissions in particular take on their full responsibility of powers. I do think that overall, in a generality, we are very differential to the executive and the first selectman in particular, and rely on guidance that can come from us. You are absolutely right. At the same time, I also think that as elected representatives, there's a question that we all have to answer when we are elected as to whether to trust our own judgment on items based on our own experiences, or to rely on the way that the wind is blowing out in the community and what we're hearing from people on the street. And for each of us, that's going to be a different answer for every different question. One of the things that I have tried, not just recently, but historically when I was on the RTM and so forth, to do is, and these are volunteer positions. Everybody up here is volunteering to be here now, when they're campaigning, when they're knocking on your door, when they're at those board meetings later on, because I'm hoping that many of these folks are elected and are serving our great town. But I think it's important to do some outreach and not just check in when we're knocking on the door every couple of years or every 4 years. It's important, and I've really tried to do some office hours where people can come and talk to me and make myself accessible. It's all a balancing act, but I thank you for those comments. I think it's all important for us to remember.
I would also remind everyone the Board of Ed is responsible for evaluating the superintendent. So that is part of our responsibility, and to your point, I think we all take that very seriously and help to establish expectations for the superintendent so that we have kind of dual role. The other dual role we have is we have a responsibility to the people that live in this town that don't vote. Those are the students. So that is, from my perspective, my primary responsibility is to make sure that we're providing our students with the experience that they need. And then, of course, their parents. So that kind of goes hand in hand in some ways, but sometimes it's not always the same thing. I agree with Josh that I'm glad you brought that up. It is something for us to remind ourselves of. I do think with the Board of Ed, because we do supervise the superintendent, we have policy and balancing that and not just saying you're doing a great job is important for us to continue to do. And I think we do our best to do that. There are 9 of us, so sometimes it's a little bit different. But I do think too, for the Board of Ed, the responsibility of the students is very different and a little harder sometimes to get that information from them because they're not out in the community talking the way that they're not answering the door when we're knocking. We're not talking to them because they're not voting. So maybe that's another thing that we could be doing better is actually getting more feedback from kids. We do have kids report out and tell us what they're doing at the board meetings, but it's usually a very positive spin on what they're doing. So maybe we need more information from them as far as maybe what's not growing great. Anybody else? You good?
She wanted there.
So in full disclosure, since you're all disclosing your I'm related to the guy down the end.
And who are you related to? Me. And you're her mother. Will God help you when you
my neighbor.
Oh,
Well, thank you all for coming.
Yeah, thank you all. Thank you. And thank you to the candidates. It's a couple hours to Josh, whose idea this was, and put most of it together. So.
And I think we'll be here for a few minutes. If you have questions you want to just ask us. No, of course.
Don't hold it against
She's
you.
like, no. But please
Encourage people to vote.
Yes.
That's the most important thing.
Because every voice matters.
Yeah, vote November 4th or sooner.
Make some burgers and fries.